Hello and welcome to part 3 of our new docu-series, Project 2029, A Reimagining. I'm Molly Jong-Fast, a columnist, podcaster, and person you occasionally see on cable news. In this series, we're trying to start a conversation about where the Democratic Party goes when it regains power. The hope is that there will be an agenda that puts people first and creates incentives for many of the voters Democrats have lost to come back to the party. In this episode, we're going to discuss reproductive rights and how, when Democrats regain power, we can work to make sure those rights are codified. We've assembled some of the smartest people we know to explain to us how we can begin to protect, codify, and help change our legislation so we never have to fight for these rights again. But first, it's easy to forget just all the ways these rights are being attacked. So let's walk through where we are at this very moment in America today.
Probably the most significant thing that's happened in recent years is that the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, which opened the door to a bunch of other legal changes that are really unprecedented, right? So we've seen criminal abortion laws that are much more stringent than anything that was on the books in the 19th century. We've seen those laws interpreted in ways that preclude physicians from intervening in miscarriages and stillbirths, not just in situations where people are seeking abortions. And we've seen that those laws can have unintended consequences for people at the end of life too, people whose advanced directives don't address pregnancy or who don't have an advanced directives at all. So I think one of the things we've seen is that what seems to be changes just about abortion, which are significant enough in their own right, are spilling over into lots of areas involving people's lives, whether that's birth control or IVF on the one hand, or certainly people with wanted pregnancies having pregnancy complications on the other.
So you both have the flat out criminal laws that make abortion a crime, aiding and abetting abortion a crime. Texas has been the innovator on this, for lack of a better word, that allows these bounty hunting lawsuits where ordinary individuals can sue someone because they have provided an abortion, aided and abetted providing an abortion. They've just passed a law about going after the manufacturers and the shippers of medication abortion, which has been a lifeline in post-Roe America. So it's everything from the state prosecuting to giving individuals the power to become sort of their own vigilante attorneys general to go after people who, again, might be a friend helping someone, go out of state. I mean, we have represented individuals in the state of Texas where an abusive boyfriend has sued the friends and family of a woman, in one case, who left the state of Texas to have an abortion in another state. That's perfectly legal to do. But he brought this lawsuit against them. We represented another woman. She found out when she was driving around that $1 million lawsuit had been filed against her for allegedly helping a friend secure medication abortion in the state of Texas.
And all of this madness started with SB 8.
So SB 8 was passed in 2021, and at the time it was mostly designed to circumvent Roe. So the idea was that instead of the government enforcing criminal abortion laws, that enforcement would be outsourced to private citizens who could sue anyone who performed an abortion for at least $10,000, regardless of whether that person had any connection to the abortion. So this was designed to scare abortion providers to stop offering services. It was designed to kind of incentivize a group of bounty hunters to go after them. And it legally meant that some of the constitutional roadblocks that could be in place if the government was enforcing these laws would go away. And of course, SB 8 stopped mattering as much when Roe came down because Texas could enforce lots of other criminal bans. But it still mattered in lots of other ways because we've seen that sometimes politicians hesitate to enforce the most stringent bans because they know that doing so will be politically unpopular.
Medication abortion, which is a 2-pill regime that has been on the market, approved by the FDA for 25 years as safe and effective to terminate a pregnancy in the early period of pregnancy. This has been the case as 10,000 women are getting abortion pills in states where there's a ban. So, of course, it's in the sightline of those who want to ban abortion entirely. And there are different ways that they're going about this. Texas just passed a law that goes into effect December the 4th, House Bill 7, which says that vigilantes can come and sue manufacturers, people who are mailing medication abortion to try to stop it. Second, The Trump administration has asked the FDA to take another look at the approval of medication abortion. Now, this is something that should be a determination on the science, on the facts, as it has been for 25 years. But they are seeking to get a reversal from the agency of the approval of medication abortion, because then it would not only cut off medication abortion in states where it's banned, but it would cut off medication abortion in states where it's legal across the United States.
And this, of course, means every woman, whether seeking an abortion or not, can feel the implications of these overreaching laws.
What this means is that every woman's pregnancy is suspect and every woman's reproductive health is at risk. We are seeing that with people who are pregnant and want to continue their pregnancies but face a healthcare issue or healthcare crisis who can't get the care that they need. We've seen that in Texas and Florida and Georgia. We've unfortunately seen the tragic deaths of several women, some of whom were not seeking abortion care. They were seeking help with their pregnancies that they wanted. And I think that is the unfortunate reality of abortion bans, is that doctors and hospital systems feel scared to provide necessary care because the state law could essentially criminalize them for doing so. It puts every woman and every person's health at risk.
This is Jessica Valenti, who writes the definitive Substack on women's health, Abortion Every Day. She has tirelessly chronicled these attacks on women's health.
Women are dying, women are going septic, the maternal mortality rate is going up, the infant mortality rate is going up, the sepsis rate is going up, right? Like all of these things that we could sort of expect. Then there are the ripple effects of bans where you have OBGYNs leaving anti-abortion states. As a result of that, maternity wards are shuttering. As a result of maternity wards shuttering, there are these huge maternal health deserts across the country, right? And so there's sort of like the medical piece that's happening. What is positive, I will say, and this is the thing that they're trying to attack the most, it should go without saying, but it doesn't, that there isn't a fetal heartbeat when these bans are limiting abortion, right? When Republicans pass a heartbeat law, it's generally at around 6 weeks of pregnancy. There is no heartbeat then because there is no heart formed yet. And so it really is just, again, a fake science thing to try to ban abortion as early as possible. Most people are not going to know that they're pregnant at 6 weeks. And I think it's part of this broader effort by Republicans to seem medically credible, to seem scientifically credible, because they can't just say, oh, we just don't want you having a right, or this is religious, or this is ideological, because they know how incredibly, incredibly unpopular it is. That's the same reason we're just concerned about women's health, we're just concerned about coercion, we're just concerned about clean water. They can't say what they actually want because no one agrees with them. And I mean, no one, not even in red states, even in the reddest states and the states that are considered the most anti-abortion, people still don't want these laws, right? Like they still want to repeal abortion bans. Republicans still want to repeal abortion bans. There is no overstating how unpopular these laws are. I think they may be the most unpopular laws on the books in America. And again, this is part of why I do the newsletter too, because there is this real issue with a lot of lefty male pundits and, experts who want to say that we need to compromise on abortion, and that's how we're going to win red states, and that's where we're going to, meet in the middle somehow. And it's so far removed from the reality of this issue that I'm desperate to be like constantly reiterating this so that people understand how popular this issue is for Democrats. I think one of the best examples of that is the rise of what conservatives call equal protection bills, which basically claim they're a fetal personhood push, basically claim that fetuses, embryos, fertilized eggs have equal protection rights under the 14th Amendment of the Constitution. And we've seen over a dozen states introduce bills that would state that and would make having an abortion, would punish the abortion patient as a murderer. And in a lot of these states, that could mean the death penalty. A couple of years ago, Republicans would say, the legislators would say, oh, these are just a couple of like outliers. These are a couple of extremists. No one is taking these bills seriously. Guess what? We're seeing more of the bills introduced. We're seeing the bills get more co-sponsors. Just a couple of weeks ago, South Carolina had multiple hearings on one of these bills. This is a real thing. And it really concerns me that mainstream media in particular, because they know that these bills are not going to pass right now, they sort of tend to ignore them, right? Or they treat them as if, well, again, these are extreme, this is radical, this is not going to go anywhere. That's not true. We see it increasing. I think it was a few months ago after Kentucky introduced one of these bills, the Courier-Journal in Kentucky, like the largest, most circulated newspaper in Kentucky, ran an op-ed by one of these guys who pushes equal protection bills. They call themselves abortion abolitionists. They ran an op-ed by him where he's defending this, and it's like, how is it possible that we've gotten to the point where a state's paper of record is seriously talking about whether or not to give women the death penalty for abortion? The other thing, in addition to the equal protection, is the attacks on travel. Right? We've seen multiple states, and attacks on speech. We've seen multiple states like Idaho and Tennessee pass what they call anti-trafficking, anti-abortion trafficking laws that they claim are to help minors who might be being abused. It says you can't take a minor out of state without parental permission for an abortion, which on its face sounds like, okay, like that sounds reasonable. The laws are written, and I should say they are in court, and some sections of this have been blocked. But the way that they're written, it basically says helping a teenager get an abortion in any way, not just having them leave the state, driving them to the post office to pick up abortion pills, texting them the URL to a clinic could be a felony, right? And then you have, I forget how many counties it is, but it's like over a dozen counties in Texas that have passed anti-trafficking ordinances, not just directed at minors, but of women of all ages, so that it's illegal to help someone leave the state in these counties. And so you're talking about literally restricting adult women's right to travel. And again, we're not hearing about it, right? Like if there were dozens of counties doing this to men, saying men can't leave the state, or you can be sued if you help a woman leave the state, you would hear about it every day.
And while many anti choice activists believe that you can ban abortion and still protect pregnant women from the downstream effects of banning abortion, we know that in reality that doesn't work.
What people aren't seeing, because although it gets coverage to some extent in the press, it doesn't get covered a lot, is how impossible it is to craft exceptions to abortion bans for health risks. It is impossible. You cannot list the conditions. And part of it's impossible because the way healthcare is normally practiced, you make a decision for yourself about benefits and risks.
I mean, I think that one of the things we've seen since Roe is overturned is that movements to criminalize abortion are having a lot of unintended consequences. So we've seen that doctors and hospitals and lawmakers don't know what abortion means, right? So if you have someone coming in suffering from preeclampsia, or someone who's had a miscarriage and there may still be fetal cardiac activity, but a pregnancy is fundamentally ended, we've seen doctors saying, sorry, your wife may die, but we can't intervene yet, because if we intervene, that'll be an abortion and that will be committing a felony and we'll go to jail for a decade or more. And so we've seen a lot of people who are not abortion seekers, right? People who are just have wanted pregnancies, who are having medical emergencies, be turned away. We've seen hospitals sometimes, the Associated Press reporting that some emergency rooms don't want to treat pregnant patients at all because they're afraid of the legal complications. We've seen patients in end of life scenarios who are diagnosed with essentially brain death, have their families be unable to decide whether they should remain on life support during a pregnancy, because doctors and lawmakers interpret the law to say that that would be an abortion. And we've seen IVF families, some of whom, view their own embryos as their children, be told that as an unintended consequence of some of these changes, they no longer have access to IVF.
It's not just that the right refuses to carve out protections for pregnant women, it's more than that. They have declared war on birth control. And this war on birth control has spilled out into one of the greatest technological achievements for having more children, IVF.
IVF wasn't a culture war issue until recently, if you think about it. And it's become one, I think, partly because of the overruling of Roe. That was pretty obvious in February 2024 when the Alabama Supreme Court held that the state's wrongful death law, which allows you to bring certain lawsuits, applied to IVF embryos. And that had the effect of basically entirely stopping IVF in the state until lawmakers passed a statute essentially not denying that IVF embryos were people, but allowing IVF to go forward. But that wasn't the end of it. We've seen people in the anti abortion movement continuing to push to limit IVF and promoting what they call a more effective alternative to IVF, they call restorative reproductive medicine. So we've started to see states in the South promoting this idea as an alternative to IVF. And what restorative reproductive medicine is, just for context, is essentially a lot of the treatments that you would get for infertility that stop short of IVF. They focus almost entirely on female infertility, and they often end up being ineffective for people who would need IVF or people dealing with male factor infertility. And they can be used by people whose clock is running out as far as the efficacy of IVF is concerned. So we're seeing an ongoing effort to restrict IVF and also to fund and promote an alternative that may not work as well for people experiencing infertility.
And what you see over and over again is these laws sweep up people who aren't even having abortions. This case is a prime example.
She had a miscarriage. And like most people do, you put your miscarriage remains in the trash. What else are you supposed to do with them? And so she was arrested for that. There was a woman in Texas who spent 5 months in jail after she miscarried in a public bathroom because they didn't like that she flushed it. I have taken like internally to calling them like ick laws because all of these, it's like the ick factor. All of these mostly male cops and prosecutors have no idea what pregnancy loss really looks like. They get icked out when they see blood, right? And they're desperate to punish people. And so it really is this like loophole. It's this way around the prohibition on arresting abortion patients. They figure out different seemingly unrelated charges to bring against women.
And crisis pregnancy centers are the right answer to much of this. And we all know those do nothing but fail women's health needs.
That like crisis pregnancy centers really are central to Republicans' plan for all of this. That, you know, CPCs are their enforcement arm. They are trying to sort of give CPCs this super immunity from state regulation so that trying to regulate them at all, trying to say, hey, you can't lie to women, you can't put out this nonsense is considered a First Amendment violation. And so they're really, it's not just that they're using these groups to funnel, you know, millions of taxpayer dollars into religious organizations, but they are emboldening and empowering these organizations, which they say are good to replace all the Planned Parenthood clinics that their policies are shuttering, right? So they are saying, yeah, they're the opposite, and they're not real healthcare clinics. Like that's how little they think about our health. They're saying we're going to give millions and millions of dollars to these groups that don't have doctors on staff for the most part. Sometimes they have like a medical director that'll come in once or twice a month, and usually they're like a retired urologist. It's just absurd. They're not real, but they're trying to paint this picture of CPCs as a reasonable replacement for Planned Parenthood clinics. And one of the primary reasons they're doing that is to enact an informal ban on birth control, right? They don't want to come out and say birth control is illegal. They don't want that heat. They don't want that backlash. But if they can get rid of every single credible reproductive health clinic in a state and replace it with a crisis pregnancy center that, one, can't prescribe birth control because there's no doctors there, and two, won't, and the only way that they'll talk about it is to say that it'll give you cancer or it'll kill you. There you have like a ban on birth control without ever having to write it in the books.
And what is very striking is that the abortion rate has actually not gone down despite all the obstacles and work the right wing has put into trying to make it harder to get an abortion.
What is positive is that the abortion rate hasn't gone down, right? These laws have been shockingly ineffective at reducing the abortion rate. The only thing that they have done is increase suffering, increase death, right? Like they're not reducing the abortion rate. And that's in large part because of abortion medication and telehealth. Right now, I think it's about 1 in 4, the last study showed 1 in 4 abortions in America are provided via telehealth. And so you have all of these women in red states getting abortion pills shipped to them from doctors in shield states. Anti-abortion people are really, really pissed about that. And so the vast majority of attacks that we're seeing right now, the attacks that we're seeing this year especially, are on abortion pills. That is what they are most desperate to do away with telehealth specifically.
And some blue states have already enacted shield laws.
Abortion shield laws are policies that states enact that aim to, in some way, protect abortion providers in that state from being able to provide care to those who live in other states. So essentially protecting an abortion provider in your state from any charges from a state that bans abortion and might want to go after you. About 22 states have some kind of shield law on the books in some way, but 8 states have a really important component, which is this extension of the shield law protections to telehealth provision. So that's what really allows a provider in a protective state to treat a patient in another state via telehealth and get them the medication that they need to have the abortion care that they need. So incredibly important, huge innovation, lots of room for states to continue enacting them and also continue strengthening them, because the legal developments on these change almost every week, week to week, month to month. And so it's really important for states to know that none of these laws are one and done. You can't just pass one shield law or pass the right to abortion and call it a day. You have to keep abreast of what the attacks are and keep finding ways in your state to respond to them and to protect abortion provision.
But the goal here is to protect women's reproductive rights so that there isn't a cycle of losing and gaining rights.
The kind of end game for the anti-abortion movement is fetal personhood. The idea that, from the moment of fertilization, they're constitutional rights. And they think that would be a path to a national abortion ban through the judiciary that would also apply to things like IVF. It turns out, unsurprisingly, that strong majorities of voters don't want this, and that they could put some effective pressure on state judges and even federal judges and Republican politicians not to embrace this. But normal people don't know that that's what this is, right? It's like the life begins at conception thing. If you say to an average voter, when do you think life begins? Some of them who are not opposed to abortion may well say conception, right? I mean, it doesn't follow. All this other stuff doesn't follow from that. So I think if people want to make a difference on reproductive rights, in addition to voting, in addition to campaigning, in addition to donating to organizations that are either litigating this or helping people access services, there's also just telling your neighbors what this actually is and is not, right? To say to people, the issue here is not that when you see an ultrasound from your friend who's excited to be pregnant, that you think that's a baby. The issue is, do you want people who do these things to go to jail? Because that's what we're talking about. It's not about, do you value life or do you not value life, or do you value this life more than the pregnant person's life? It's essentially putting women and pregnant people back in the picture and saying what we're doing is criminalizing some of these people. We're not actually helping anyone by doing that. We're just creating a bigger carceral state.
When there is a majority in the Congress that supports abortion rights, and a president who will sign that legislation, that Congress needs to pass comprehensive legislation to protect access to abortion. And it cannot be about going back to, the shreds that were left of Roe. It has to be comprehensive. It has to be stronger. And here's the thing. Because of Roe versus Wade, for many years, people did not understand that Congress has the power to do this, but they do. And let me just say about this, the American public is already way ahead of Congress on this. In every state where they've been given the opportunity, a majority has voted for access to abortion. So we think about, people have to realize this is within grasp of being able to have, Congress address this national nightmare of the criminalization of abortion. Congress can do it. The movement has been working on some very strong legislation that when there is a majority supporting abortion rights, I would fully expect to be introduced. And it would be legislation that covers the two big prongs, which is, the legal right to access abortion care. And the second would be the addressing the financial issues, the insurance issues that I just talked about. As well as issues of, not excluding immigrants from healthcare.
One thing I think a kind of bare minimum idea Democrats would explore would probably be repealing bad old laws like the Comstock Act, which is sort of hanging fire as a possibility for a Republican administration to use to ban the mailing of any item related to abortion, which could be a backdoor national ban on abortion. So I think a first step for Democrats would be to take that off the table. Democrats have also been focusing on some kind of federal guarantee for access to reproductive rights. The model that was receiving the most attention in the Biden years was the Women's Health Protection Act. And we may see a kind of updated, Women's Health Protection Act 2.0 that will recognize some of the changes we've seen since that bill was drafted. Because that bill was drafted, of course, in an era where a lot of the kinds of state laws we're seeing from conservatives just weren't on the books. So, and the reason that's important is because Republicans are not very likely to pass a sweeping bill criminalizing abortion and IVF and contraception because then they're going to have that be on their voting record. The danger about something like the Comstock Act is that Republicans can say, hey, it's not me, it's just existing federal law. I'm just enforcing existing federal law. So removing the Comstock Act would mean essentially that to get to the same results, Republicans would actually have to be accountable for what they were voting for. And I think that would be a much, much heavier lift for people opposed to abortion.
Roe v. Wade was the floor, not the ceiling. And I think that's an important reminder for what we think about now when we think about, okay, Roe is gone. We have to build back something better and stronger and something that really allows for true reproductive health care access for all and not the limitations that we had even under the Roe framework. That there's no one fix. This is an effort that needs to happen at every level of government, the state legislatures, the courts, Congress, and a federal administration. Nothing short of an all-out national right to abortion for anyone at any time without barriers is acceptable from a values judgment, right? From a values point of view, from our human rights point of view. But what that means in practice is we have to be responding to all of the attacks that we are seeing. There are city councils who are passing laws saying you can't use the roads in that city or county to leave to go get an abortion. There are states that are trying to ban people from helping someone leave the state to get abortion care that is legal in another state, right? Like they are really finding any lever they can to criminalize patients and providers and really limit your ability as a human being to move around the country with ease, which is your constitutional right to travel. And so I say that because we can't just say, hey, there's one silver bullet here. It's not ballot measures. That's part of the toolbox, right? That's one tool in the toolbox. The wins that we've had in state ballot measures are an incredible display of clear articulation that the public wants to see abortion rights protected, even in what we would consider kind of traditionally hostile or red, so-called red states, right? That's not universally true, but it's by and large true. And I think that I would start with a state-by-state strategy, leave no state untested. When you can win in Missouri, when you can win in Kansas, it means you can win in other places too. Build the ground game, build the state policy muscle to remove abortion bans, to overturn abortion bans, and to start focusing on access, right? Not just legality, but access. And then use that momentum at the federal level to enact a national right to abortion and to do things like protecting your ability to travel across state lines for healthcare of any kind, protecting your ability to access a full range of information about how to use mifepristone or how to use medication abortion, to enact levers and create abortion funds that are publicly funded, make sure Medicaid and other public insurance programs cover abortion care, make sure there are not limitations for private insurance. We know that the Hyde Amendment has been a horrific policy for also nearly 50 years that even while Roe stood, really stopped people from getting the care that they need, that they otherwise would have gotten.
We need to think big. This new era of politics shouldn't be about Democrats taking half measures the way they might have in previous administrations.
The ideal scenario is national protections for abortion by just saying the government has no place intervening in pregnancy ever. Pregnancy is too complicated to legislate at any point. And we are like, I don't want to hear about like Roe, restoring Roe. I don't want to hear about 24 weeks. I don't want to hear about viability, which is a made up term. That's not a medical term. Just there is no place for the government in pregnancy, period.
Another thing we must do is protect women from frivolous lawsuits filed to strip away their reproductive rights.
From civil suits, right? Like that's the other thing that we're seeing. Texas, which is always leading the way in these sort of like nightmare bills, they passed a law that just went into effect this month that allows people to sue pretty much anyone who touches abortion pills on their way to a woman in Texas for $100,000. And so again, it's a way to get around this idea that like there's a prohibition on actually criminalizing or actually suing the pregnant person who's had an abortion. Instead of doing that, we'll ruin everyone's life around you, right? We'll make it so you have no support system. We'll make it so that your friends and family are too afraid to help you get abortion pills, too afraid to lend you money to get out of town, too afraid to give you advice. They want to create isolation and fear and this chilling effect.
So I think there's definitely a question of Democrats getting their stuff together about it, because we've had plenty of scenarios where Democrats had majorities that could pass federal protections for reproductive rights, and they've literally never done it. They didn't do it in the 90s. They didn't do it in the aughts. And so I think an important thing to happen if Democrats are able to do this again is to finally say, this time it's a priority, right? There was always this sort of either Democrats warring with one another about how progressive or practical to be, to the point where they didn't do anything, or it was Democrats saying, well, we can deal with reproductive rights later because we have bigger problems. And I think if Democrats get into power again, there would have to be a moment where they say, you know, the time is really now. This is a priority. It's not, this is going to take backseat again to whatever other issue of the day happens to be there. And I'm not that pessimistic about that, because I think we've seen since Roe was overturned that this is an issue on which Democrats' principles and kind of selfish priorities dovetail, right? A lot of Democrats' political self-interest aligns with their ability to enact their principles here, right? This isn't a situation where Democrats are out on a limb doing something that's likely to cost them electorally when they're acting on their principles. Because one of the lessons we've seen since the overruling of Dobbs is that reproductive rights are not a Democratic issue. They're an issue everybody, not everybody, but that a majority of Americans agree on. It's a winning issue in deep red states like Missouri. It's a winning issue in purple states like Arizona and Michigan. Polling in places like Louisiana suggests that a majority of voters there think their abortion laws are too harsh. So the ballot initiative campaign's been a really powerful way to take advantage of that where it's possible, to say essentially that where the Republican Party is on this is not where the American people are on this anywhere, including in some of the reddest states in America.
Thank you so much for watching this episode. We made this series to get the conversation going about what happens after Trumpism. Democrats need to be more than just anti-Trump, and part of this includes a bold vision to rebuild after Trump's disastrous agenda reshapes America. We'd love to create as much of a conversation around this as possible. Please share it with a friend, and click like on this video, and comment so it spreads to more people on YouTube.